Else jumps on, we certainly can accommodate them as they join us. Just really quickly, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank everyone for taking some time this evening to be part of this discussion. This is the third meeting of this type that we've had to go over the goals and the recommendations primarily in the community revitalization strategy that IHDA has been so gracious to help us work through over the past couple of years. I don't want to speak for our IHDA partners, but this is certainly the first community planning document that I've ever done in the middle of a pandemic. So it's been a little different than usual. However, what we really want to do tonight is perhaps, and I don't want to put Emily or one of the other IHDA people on the spotlight here, or under the spotlight, but perhaps you can kind of give an overview of where this came from and what's occurred over the last couple of years. And then what I'd really like to do, since tonight is dedicated to the Southside, is to really focus in on the goals and recommendations that we heard back from the residents of the Southside, just to make sure that those are still the goals and recommendations that that you believe are appropriate as we kind of hopefully round the final curve of this planning process. So with that, I will mute myself and turn it over to Emily.
Thanks, Ross. And thanks everyone for being here. My name is Emily Mueller. I am the Assistant Director of Community Revitalization, and I oversee one of the 4 different components of our Strategic Planning and Reporting Department at the Illinois Housing Development Authority, or as we call it, IHDA. This partnership that we undertook a little over 2 years ago, we weren't intending it to go this long whatsoever, but the pandemic really threw us off. Was really one of the very first pilot projects that we did under our community revitalization program. And as I've explained in the last couple meetings, this program really developed as a grassroots and natural development to what we were doing is community revitalization in our low-income housing tax credit program, or as we call it, LIHTC. LIHTC is the primary funding source for the multifamily rehabilitation and development of affordable housing units across the country, and IHDA oversees the administration of tax credits for the state of Illinois. And so 4 years ago, community revitalization, that's buzz term, but as we see it is community planning, community development activities, was incentivized in that LIHTC competitive process. And as we were offering that incentive, we heard from a lot of communities and affordable housing developers that they appreciated having that, but that it was sometimes very difficult to attain. There's 10 points, there's 10 criteria, but you need to pass thresholds to even qualify for that scoring criteria in an already competitive process. So we started offering technical assistance. We are already doing that, really just explaining the criteria to people and communities and developers. And we took it one step further. We had an opportunity to really offer planning services. And so we heard that there was a lot of need across the state. And so we started piloting, offering proactive planning services, whether it was community outreach, data analysis that we already did internally at IHDA, housing stock surveys, and really that has continued to develop into the program that it is today. City of Peoria was not the first partnership that we had, but it was the second that we signed. The ID number that we use is 002. We're now in the 80s, but I think it's been a journey of learning and development with Peoria and then the other ones that we were working on at the onset. So it's very exciting to have these first few projects kind of come to the finish line or the final product. It's certainly not the end, as we've indicated with our other communities. This is a growing and learning process. And so depending on our partners, we can continue to provide technical assistance, to provide updates in the years to come. We're really here to just provide free access into the data and analysis that we use at the state and to hopefully connect communities to resources, whether they be at IHDA or at other state agencies or organizations that we work with in a greater way. So what you've seen in this plan, the draft plan, is the culmination of all of those different components. IHDA really does the data analysis. We did a lot of the writing, and Peoria is responsible for bringing the stakeholders, the community residents, and then the goal development of this planning process. And then we work together very closely and have across the last 2 years. And excited to answer any questions that people have, either about IHDA or this process more specifically.
Hey, Martha, I think you're muted if you're talking.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
I'll start off by saying, Emily, what did you say the LIHTC stand for?
Yeah, that's the low income housing tax credit. So LIHTC.
Oh, HTC, okay. Okay. So, and then, like you said, it's been a while. So, I mean, Ross knows that I sat on a committee with, I don't know, 10 or 15 other people for somewhere around 8 or 9 months to look at community development. I believe, Ross, was it called Connect Capital, Healthy Communities Connect Capital, right? And so, that was a plan that we were working on for the Southside, and we did mapping and that kind of thing. And it seems kind of contrary to what is in this plan, particularly because we were looking at building capacity as far as building industries or businesses, and also home ownership, basically. So I'm just you're saying that this is what they've been working on for a while, and you had community input. So when did you get the input on this particular initiative from the neighborhood?
The community input that we had for the Near Southside was in 3 components as I see it. There was first the community needs assessment survey that was distributed. I'd have to look at the exact dates for you. It's in the plan. But just estimating based off our timeline, it was probably in the spring of 2019. My guess is in March, but I can look it up in this plan for you. And so that was distributed across the neighborhood and then responded to. Then we compiled those results and held a community meeting in, I believe, July of 2019 to discuss the results and meet with the residents. And at that particular meeting, we also, we co-presented with the group that was conducting the South Village MacArthur plan. I probably misnamed that, but they were also doing a study on the MacArthur corridor and we're developing recommendations for that. So we did share that meeting with them. During that time, we also had, because we had 2 other neighborhood areas, and so we also had those same surveys and additional meetings for those other 2 neighborhoods completed in the plan. And then later in the fall of 2019, we held another citywide meeting. We held it downtown. And so that was the other community meeting that we had. And we had at least a few other stakeholder meetings as well, but those were smaller and they weren't community wide. They were really just gathering the core planning staff and select stakeholders. And then, I'm sorry,
I pulled up the plan. So if you want those dates in particular for your notes or anything, I've got the plan up.
Yeah.
You know what the participation was in those meetings? You have a number?
So first off, for the survey, it was open from April 15th to June 20th, and there were 149 respondents for that. And then let me go to the public meetings really quick.
And Megan, was that for the full survey or just for the South side?
Just for Southside. And then the first set of community meetings was in July of 2019, the 16th in particular. At the Frank Campbell Center was the first one.
What was the participation there?
31 members participated in that meeting.
Okay.
And Martha, to kind of answer your question, and in terms of the content of this plan versus some of the other efforts that I know you've certainly been involved in on the South Side, there's a significant amount of overlap. I mean, there's nothing that I see in this particular document that contradicts what is either in basically all of the other planning efforts that have occurred on the Near South Side in particular over the past probably 5 years, whether it's the Healthy Communities or the Connect Capital or the MacArthur corridor plan or the South Village TIF for that matter. And I think, unless there's any other questions about the specific outreach on the South Side at this point, we can always come back to it. Perhaps we can just jump into looking at the recommendations, the goals that came out of the plan based upon that feedback that we heard from the residents who participated back in 2019, which I know it doesn't sound, it feels like it was decades ago. It was in the before time when we all used to be able to get together in a room and talk. So perhaps, and Kaylee, I don't know if do you have that image to pull up, or I can pull it up if you can give me control.
I think Megan probably has the plan set to go. And one point of clarification I want to make on the timeline too, because it was a very long time. It was a year past when we had expected to be at this point. But we finished writing the draft plan in, I believe it was June of last year. And so we didn't do any more outreach beyond that until we had this draft. We worked between the teams, passing it back and forth. And then it was really a matter of, I think, changing staff and limited capacities due to COVID. And so this has really stayed very similar. We haven't done any additional planning components since June of last year.
Okay. Well, I'll let you go ahead and finish, but because I want to just make a statement as to where we stood from the very beginning, and we meaning SCUC, and I can pretty well speak for them because we've met and we've talked about it, and so we'll go ahead, do what you have to, and then we'll look at what we are expecting. Okay.
Okay, so let me go ahead and I've actually got the page, if I do this right.
Yep.
Hopefully everyone can see something here. Okay.
Mhm.
So there were 8 recommendations that came out of the Near Southside part of the plan, which, you know, again, obviously is the focus of this evening. And these, you know, these are the 8. This is what we thought we heard from the community, you know, and then also with the data that was developed to back that up. So certainly, you know, number 1, update the quality of the housing by its new construction and redevelopment of properties owned by public entities, which I think was, you know, specifically talking about the housing authority and, you know, finishing up the redevelopment of Harrison Homes. Increase, and Martha, to your point, you know, increase stability of housing through long-term leasing and with a focus on home ownership. You know, that was not forgotten in this process. And then, you know, the third one, obviously financial literacy, housing counseling, because that, you know, those go hand in glove with home ownership. That's, you know, home ownership without knowing how to be a homeowner. We all know what happens with that, and it's not a good thing. Number 4 kind of gets to your point about, you know, attracting new businesses and job training opportunities, which, you know, you can't just, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, and you all know this, and, you know, Martha and I have worked together for more than a few years at this point. And, you know, we understand that you can't just have a neighborhood of houses. You need to have a neighborhood of houses with people in the houses who have access to good jobs. And then, you know, further down, provide office space for small businesses, a lot of startup businesses that really need kind of a small place just to kind of get their business off the ground. Preserving local heritage and historic narrative, you know, places and opportunities for residents to learn new skills. Again, that gets back to a lot of the job training, kind of the core of the job training. As the economy changes, people need to pick up new skills. I mean, you know, to be honest, if we were doing this a year ago, well, maybe 13 months ago, I mean, some of the skills that you now need in the job place that you really could get away without having them a year ago, in terms of video conferencing, is something that's just, it's necessary now. So, you know, these aren't necessarily kind of brick and mortar job skills. This could be job skills of all types. And then ensuring that a lot of older residents in the community can basically stay where they are and age in place. You know, we have, as I think all of you know, the city for many years has had a program where we provide handicap ramps for houses. You know, if someone is at a point where they're no longer able to get in and out of their house, then we'll help them by putting a ramp on that house so that they can stay in their house, as opposed to having to move somewhere else to a location where there's a level grade entry, because that's probably not where they want to be. They probably want to stay in their own house. So these were the 8 recommendations that really resonated with us as we went through this process. And I guess I would ask the Southside residents that are on this call, you know, I'd ask you to just take a second to let us know, are we in the ballpark here? Is this what we're looking for in terms of a document that provides a vision for going forward?
Well, I'm going to wait for someone else to speak, because I have some comments on that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Ross, I kind of got you. The last one I heard you mention that was numbered was number 4. So number 5, what was number 5 and 6? And
It's on the screen, Denise.
I can't read it. It's so small.
Yeah, it's small. I couldn't read it either. I had
All
to.
right, hang on. Let me see. Let's see. Is that getting bigger?
Yeah. There we go.
Talk about new skills. How's that? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Sorry, wait. No, hang on.
That was it.
How's that?
Well, that's a big improvement over earlier.
Trust me.
I can actually read that, and I have my
yeah.
glasses.
Trust me, Denise. I have one of these beside my desk because sometimes I need it. So yeah. So now hopefully you can read these. But number 5 was about creating some space.
Yeah, I can read it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
You don't have to repeat it.
Okay.
Do we know? I mean, I was just what is this going to look like? I mean, is this going to look like another River West, or I mean, do you all have you gotten to the point where there's been discussions about what could evolve from these 8 recommendations, or?
So Denise, this isn't necessarily a document that it's not an application for funding for a specific project. But what it does is it means that, and I'll focus on IHDA here since they were gracious enough to be on the call tonight and have been partners. But IHDA as the housing development
Right.
authority for the state, they have a lot of funds that have to do with housing. But a neighborhood is more than housing. And so you see things like job training and small business and so on and so forth. But there are state agencies that deal with business development and with job training. And then there are federal agencies that do the same. And one of the things that we're seeing right now with all of the federal stimulus dollars that are beginning to kind of make their way out of Washington is that those dollars are set aside for specific purposes. It might be business development, or it might be infrastructure improvement, or it might be housing improvement. But all of the applications for these funds basically ask the question that says, is this a goal of the local community? And so if we have a document like this, then effectively the city of Peoria, through its residents, has said, these are the goals in this particular neighborhood. So if IHDA, and perhaps if we've got a little bit of time later, IHDA might be able to touch on some of the programs, some of the housing programs that they have available, both for new construction, for renovation, for rental, and for home ownership, to kind of give just a really quick overview of what's available. But you need to be able to tie a lot of these funding applications to an actual document that says this is what we want. And so to have something like this that's adopted that says we would like to provide more startup or more assistance for startup businesses, and we'd like to build some job training opportunities, so that if something comes along that says the EDA, the Economic Development Authority, has some dollars available to help with small business development, then we can hold this plan up and we can say, look, we're not coming late to the show to say we just want this money. This is a goal that we have heard from our residents, and therefore that helps us get a better chance of actually being able to get these dollars. So it's a document that we would have to help us get funding. It's not a document, it's not an application for actual funding. Does that help?
Yes. And my next question was going to be, well, it's a document that would help get funding. So what does that mean, Ross? Does that mean at some point you're going to pursue, you're going to get the funding and implement these 8 recommendations with those individuals that participated in the survey, that community, or what?
Well, that would certainly be the hope. I mean, you know, obviously having the document on its own isn't enough, but we need, but it's a core component. So, and as I mentioned, there's an immense amount of money sort of beginning to percolate around, and some of that is going to come directly from the federal government. Some of it is going to be funneled through the state. And then made available to local communities within the state. And so, you know, let me give you an example that's just a little bit different, but maybe it's a good illustration. So there are transportation dollars that are being made available right now for kind of large transportation projects. You know, just for example, maybe it's the conversion of Adams and Jefferson downtown from one-way to two-way streets, or it's the improvement to Lincoln and Howard as they run through the Southside. Okay, just, you know, multi-million-dollar projects. So there are dollars that are being set aside at the state government and the federal government level for that type of activity. But one of the requirements is that you can only apply for projects that are already in an adopted plan. And so, you know, the city has what's called a TIP, Transportation Improvement Plan. And if a project like Lincoln and Howard or conversion of downtown, if that's in the TIP, then we can then apply for these transportation dollars. If those projects were not in the TIP, we couldn't apply for it. And this is sort of the same way that right here, we've got a document that, if adopted, says we really want to support small business. We really want to have a focus on home ownership. We want to do housing counseling. We want to be able to provide home ownership or housing modification so that people can age in place. Those are the links that we would then put into an application. Ultimately, Denise, and I'll keep calling you Denise for another few weeks, and then you'll become councilwoman. But you know, ultimately, it will be the council's decision in terms of what funds or what grant funds to accept and what to do with those funds, you know, within whatever the grant allows. But this is really a key component to being able to go after these dollars.
Okay, I want to jump in. When these 8 questions, 8 entities recommendations were put together, these were basically dependent upon the 180 people that was involved in that. Is that where these came from? Because I'm wondering how, you know, if this were any stakeholders involved particularly, you know, that came up with this, or was just individuals? Because I don't remember either attending either one of these sessions. I do remember a survey that wasn't, in my opinion, well distributed, but I do remember a survey coming to one of our meetings or a couple of our meetings. So we're saying that, you know, you said 149 and 31, so around 180 people really came up with these out of, because you know, there's approximately 11,000 or so people on the South Side. And I'm just wondering how these came from the people that you said attended and or filled the survey out. Is that correct? Because what SCUC has been talking about is home ownership. We have tax credit properties. I have participated in a lot of those. We have the OPAR properties up, you know, up for downtown and all, and farther south side as well. And those properties were tax credit, which means that the neighborhood had to be informed, had to buy in. And so as a Goose Lake president, I was able to bring all these people together. Cityscapes, the same thing. The Dynasty Project had to have the neighborhood involved to get those tax credits. And so then there was River West, of course. That was another one that I participated in heavily with writing that application. But I'm just trying to see, you know, I personally think that this is my personal opinion. I would like to see how we can build wealth, because that's the only way that the South Side of Peoria, in my opinion, is ever going to move to the next level. I really, really want to promote home ownership, but it seems like, you know, will we be able to do that with tax credit? Is there, Emily, is that something that IDA can do? Does IDA work directly with neighborhoods to build affordable homes? We call, when I call affordable homes, I mean homes that people can purchase, and then we can promote employment so that people can have a livable wage and live where they want to live. It just seems like we would, if we upgrade the neighborhood or the community, then the city gets more taxes and everybody wins. But if we continue to put, you know, the tax credit, the low income, those kinds of things in the area, you know, it's like concentrating a certain level of people in one area. And so, you know, yeah. I don't know. I'm just saying. I don't remember. You know, I may be a little older, so my memory may be fading me, but I don't remember being a part of the decision for those eight recommendations. So
Thanks,
can you tell me if you have a program that promotes home ownership?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 2 points. One I want to make about the recommendations, and I was at the meetings that most of the discussions happened for the recommendations, but that was really done by the staff at the city of Peoria and Carrie Lynn, and at the time, Kim Smith, who was with the city, Kimberly Smith, really led that process. And I know I do want to make mention on behalf of them that, especially for the Near Southside, it was a priority to highlight the goals done by the IDG MacArthur Corridor Plan and really connect with those and support to those. So I know that was a driving factor behind the goals that were identified for this plan as well. It was really meant.
You could have just carried over from the MacArthur plan.
I think that many of them were. They identified in the MacArthur plan, they identified more goals than are identified in here. And they also had some very particular action steps to take towards them. And these were meant to support those directly.
I'm not sure if everybody got the MacArthur plan. Denise, Mr. Johnson, are you on the line? I know we have them.
Yes, I'm here, Martha.
Okay.
And Martha, you're kind of, I'm not, your audio's kind of, you know, going in and out. So I'm a little concerned because you all mentioned the South Side, but yet we don't. And Ross, you talked about hoping you have a plan that you have a plan that you hope you could use to maybe achieve any of these possible goals. But I'm just concerned because if I remember correctly, the MacArthur corridor proposal has never been approved, and I just don't see anything concrete, definitive that would indicate to me that these monies would be specifically used in the area, like Martha said, where there's the greatest need. I don't remember these meetings either, and I'm sure it took place, but I would love to know who some of these individuals were, because I have to be honest with you. Too often, sometimes this isn't the first time that individuals have gotten demographic information from our community for the very same purpose. And the money just does not come back, and it's not used in a way that we believe it should be used to benefit those who need it the most. One of your recommendations was talking about office space for small business startups, and that's great. It's great if it happens in the community where it would be most effective. But right now, we have really pressing needs with regards to housing. I've had people talk to me about wanting to purchase homes, but we don't have an inventory in this area. And our infrastructure is probably the worst I've seen in the city. So I don't know. I've seen plans like this talked about, the demographic information taken from these communities, whether it's the Southside or the East Bluff, but and the money does not directly come back to benefit the community, at least those individuals in the community that need it the most.
So,
Emily, maybe I'm sorry, Denise, for you.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So just to let you know, the MacArthur plan was adopted by the City Council. I think it was late 2019. Again, the last year has been a bit of a blur. And again, like as I said, like a lot of plans, these are not applications for funding. They're simply elements of a good funding application, and that's really what it kind of comes down to. But Emily, I know we've only got about 20 minutes left, so if you could perhaps, or Megan, kind of give an overview of some of the programs that IHDA does have available, certainly for home ownership. I mean, I love this new one that is out with the student loan forgiveness. I've mentioned it to both of my kids who who would benefit from it at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I also want to answer, I saw Carrie posted a question in the chat, and I think that ties in really directly to this. So as Ross mentioned, this plan, it's meant to not direct funding. It doesn't guarantee funding of any sorts. And we have that all across all of our documents. It's meant to make aware the funding sources that are out there, and then support or give data that hopefully is used to help shape some of the recommendations, although we leave that in the community's hands. We do not get involved in that process. And then hopefully give support to any sorts of applications as well, whether they be for home ownership, for LIHTC, if that's the correct application of it for the community, and it may not be, or for funding from other agencies. And I do want to give one example from another community, actually from East Peoria, where one of the communities we were working with, one of the neighborhoods identified that they had no sidewalks, no infrastructure, both within the community, but also to connect to the commercial corridor and to the grocery store. And because of that, East Peoria applied to an agency that was not IHDA. I believe it was IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation, but I could be wrong on that, to secure funding for sidewalk investments. So that's the type of development that we hope would happen and would be beneficial, and that the plans and any sorts of findings that are brought about by the community engagement or by the data analysis would help to strengthen those applications. To speak to the application of the 10 points in the LIHTC process, as I mentioned at the beginning, this whole program was really evolved directly from the LIHTC process, and so it does have that connection to it. And at the end of the day, if a program or one of these plans is finalized, then at this point in time, it's guaranteed the 10 points of community revitalization, because those are the same points that communities can cobble together using existing planning documentation to get those 10 points. Again, that does not guarantee a tax credit allocation. In fact, we've had many community revitalization submissions that have scored 10 points and still do not get awarded, but it is an incentive. And it's our hope that within IHDA, which of course are the only funding applications we can have a say in, we hope that these sorts of plans, let's say that they do highlight homeownership as a need, that would serve an incentive in the homeownership. Well, we don't have a competitive homeownership process right now, but let's say community development or blight reduction. Those are grant application programs that, let's say a community raises that as a need within this plan, it would also be incentivized in an application for those programs as well. And so IHDA does administer a variety of homeownership programs. They are almost all down payment assistance, but they're not completely limited to that. And IHDA does not administer its funds directly to homeowners themselves. They work through lenders. So they have a variety of down payment assistance programs with lenders across the state who then make those loans and give those incentives to homeowners. And the one that Ross is mentioning, it's our Smart Buy program, and that's relatively new. And it's, from everything I hear, going pretty quickly because it's very popular. It's very helpful. And that is a down payment assistance program that helps income qualifying homeowners purchase a home. It doesn't require a very large down payment, so that doesn't stand in the way. And then it also can forgive up to $40,000 of student loan debt as well. So hopefully taking down barriers to homeownership. And I will mention that most of IHDA's programs are summarized within this plan. It's one of the primary purposes of this community revitalization process, is to really just make known the programs that are available. So it is included in an appendix. It does not have all of the current, like it doesn't have the Smart Buy program in there, but because actually Carrie caught an outdated piece of information in that appendix, we will be updating it to reflect the most current programs before this draft moves forward to finalization.
So who are the other partners? When we talk about employment services, is the EDC and the workforce development partners within, not partners, but, are they participating as stakeholders other than, the community stakeholders, the city, IHDA, and other entities that are stakeholders?
I don't believe the EDC, to my memory, was involved in this process. Ross, do you remember that?
Workforce development groups and employment groups?
Honestly, I'd have to go back and look at the different organizations that we reached out to. But as Martha, as you pointed out, this document certainly has some pretty significant overlap with other documents that have been put together and adopted by other agencies. And I think, what I'm hearing from you, and and granted, it's obviously it's the people that are, it's the Southside residents that are on this call that I'm most interested in hearing from. But if you want, just looking at that list of recommendations, if you want home ownership moved up to the #1 position, then that's easy to do. So
I heard Emily say though, home ownership. Can you hear me? What I had heard Emily say was that as it relates to home ownership, that just encompasses perhaps a down payment assistance, right? Is that all that it does?
So through IHDA, and IHDA has many programs, but certainly not the only ones. There are also programs through DCEO. Some municipalities are able to create their own programs, sometimes using CDBG funds or other funds that they make use of, which could be guided by goals that are found in the recommendations. But IHDA's programs are primarily down payment assistance, but there's also housing counseling, which makes grants to housing counseling agencies so that they can provide free housing counseling. So pre-purchase, post-purchase, and then foreclosure prevention counseling to any homeowner.
Right.
I'm sorry?
Like what METEC does now?
Yes, exactly. In fact, METEC is funded by many of those funding rounds that we've had. And then there are also some funds for single family rehab. So that would be for homeowners that currently own homes and need to make repairs, maybe to their roofs or sidings or to electrical systems. There is funding for that through IHDA. And there's another one called Home Accessibility Program, and that's targeted for either seniors or individuals with a disability who need to make modifications to their home in order to stay there. So it might be expanding doorways so that a wheelchair can get through, or installing a ramp.
Yeah, I'm familiar with all these type, programs that they're good programs to have for. But if we want to change the face of the South Side, I'm just wondering. I mean, my experience with tax credit is that somebody's investing in these credits, and so somebody's getting paid. I don't know who, but if it's tax credit, it's going to be low income or moderate income, because that's what, like the OPAR homes are. Although people were paying probably around $600 a month rent or lease, they were supposed to own the home after 15 years. And of course, most of that didn't happen. So I don't know. It's just that if we don't stand our ground and say we don't want any more low income, and I don't have a thing against low income, but I would like to have what I've experienced is people in that are in low income, based on your income, they kind of are stuck in a system that won't allow them, or to move up or get a better job or do better. Otherwise, they lose their benefit, or they feel they can't afford to pay for it. But I just wish that our goal is to look at all these vacant lots that the city has and see if we can figure out how to get homes built on those, like they do in other areas. Moss Bradley has a home ownership program. Different other places have home ownership programs, and where they actually have loans that they loan people. And if we could do something like that, we could move our whole South Side. It's to the city's advantage to move the South Side. And I don't want it to feel like all the low income people are on the South Side or Peoria. That's kind of how some people are saying, but just kind of anyway. I'm just going on and on. But I was just wondering, because there's over 11,000 people that represented in the South Side. Now it used to be 16,000, but we lost people. So over 11,000 people are there, and because there wasn't much participation, and like Ross said, it probably overlapped in some of these other things that we did too. But I'm just not sure how we can be a real partner in making this happen. You have a deadline, right? No.
Well, for IHDA's behalf, we do not. We really leave that in the hands of the community to decide what they feel is, what's the process that needs to happen, how long it goes on. We don't have a deadline that we enforce.
What about Ross? Does the city have a deadline that they want to present this plan? Because I know we used to have the built money, we used to have home monies to, help homeowners upgrade their properties and things like that. And all of that was very, very popular for homeowners.
And, and Martha, we don't, so to answer your first question, no, we don't, there's no, this doesn't go, it's not a gallon of milk. It's not going to go bad after a while. But we would like to get it to a point where it can be adopted as an official plan by the city council.
Can we pull all those plans together that you talked about? Can we pull the MacArthur plan and then the Healthy Communities plan and see how they overlap, so that we can see if we're talking about the same thing as far as business and home ownership and
Yeah, absolutely. And, on the South Side, and in particular, the Near South Side, on this side of Western, has had really a pretty significant amount of planning efforts, and most of it community driven over the past few years. I mean, going back to the development of the South Village TIF, and then the Healthy Communities Plan, the workshop that we had with EPA and
Mhm.
I, Martha, I know you were down there for the 2 days and all of the other work that we did, and and then the MacArthur plan. So there's certainly been a lot of activity, and I think it's a great point that we do need to, and we're happy to do that, is to take kind of the goals and the outcomes from those different plans and overlap them so that it's clear that there's a pretty intricate web of this is what the community has told the city and all of our partners that this is what we want. And
Right.
and so that's absolutely valid, easy to do that. So we're happy to do that. And in terms of timing, obviously this plan still needs to go for formal hearing before the city's Planning and Zoning Commission, and then it has to go to the city council for adoption. So, obviously it's not, even if I could at this point, and I don't think timing wise I could, I wouldn't send it to the current council, because the current council isn't going to be the council that's going to make decisions on funding starting in May. So, this is not something that has any huge urgency to it, but I hate to take the work that city staff and IDA's staff, and then the several hundred residents who have participated in this over the past couple of years. I would sure hate to just stop and not get it to a point where it's actually adopted.
Yeah. I hear you.
And one point I want to make too that I think I haven't stated loud enough is the reason that the 10-point incentive in the LIHTC program was added to this was really because there is something called opportunity areas, and this is a market tool. And it designated certain municipalities across the state, and I believe census tracts and areas that are larger populated as opportunity areas, and they were guaranteed 10 points. And the effect that IDA saw was developers flocked to those areas and only wanted to develop in opportunity areas. And that is why, because it was such an incentive. And so that is why community revitalization was offered as an alternate route of getting those points. But community revitalization is not an automatic flip on and off switch. We have very rigorous criteria, threshold criteria, and scoring criteria that's included in this plan. And even though this planning process does offer that incentive of 10 points if you complete it, if a developer were to submit an application that contradicted the goals that were found in the plan, that would not hold with us. It contradicts all of the scoring and threshold criteria. And so that would not be an automatic shoo-in even for those 10 points.
That's why it's important to get the goals up front, get the goals right up front, right? Is this the same as opportunity zone?
No, actually it's kind of contradictory. So many of the community revitalization areas, or we don't have official community revitalization areas, but areas where we require a community revitalization plan are in opportunity zones, as DCEO declares them, which are often qualified census tracts.
Right.
And then opportunity areas are often completely opposite, show very different characteristics.
So where's the opportunity area in Peoria?
There's a variety. They're included in the plan. I can go to the page to show you.
Oh, it's okay. I was just wondering if any of them on the south side.
I don't believe so, but let me go to that actual page to verify.
Can you just define what an opportunity area is as well for everyone?
Yeah, so an opportunity area is a market designation that IDA uses. And I'm going to reference the exact page to make sure I'm including every single criteria correctly. That shows areas where affordability is prioritized as being preserved. So it's generally areas where rents are increasing, incomes are increasing, but let me get the exact criteria. And I'll actually put the link to the website that defines them in the chat box if that's easiest.
Well, that would certainly leave out the Southside.
I believe it does. I believe it does entirely.
Areas where incomes are increasing and rents are increasing?
Right.
And employment is available. In Peoria, it's typically north of War Memorial.
Well,
North,
that's
not,
what I was thinking, because that certainly does not sound like parts of the first district.
and that's why it's
You already said that we weren't an opportunity area, so I was wondering.
Right. So generally, we won't even do community revitalization. We try not to. This isn't a hard and fast rule, but as the administrator of this program, we generally try not to do community revitalization in areas that have like that are opportunity areas, because at least in the point system, it contradicts how they could earn those points.
Yeah, I found it here. Opportunity areas with areas that communities with low poverty, high access to jobs, and low concentration of existing affordable rental housing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I found that in the document.
Yeah, and even that is, I know, under scrutiny by the team that developed that, because the tax credit rules, so to speak, we call it the Qualified Allocation Plan, the QAP. It's the rules that dictate the LIHTC process. That gets reviewed every 2 years so that it can be more relevant and it can incorporate any feedback that they've heard from communities. We're actually approaching that process right now. We'll be rewriting the QAP for the next 2 years and holding summits in the next few months. So that process will happen over the summer. And I know that it's not official, so I won't speak on it, but I know that opportunity areas are expecting changes to really just reflect some of the feedback that they've heard from communities.
All right. Mr. Johnson, any questions, Mr. Johnson? Anyone else? I don't know if anybody else joined us. Mr. Johnson?
I have one question. I guess Emily or Mr. Black, what about, now I live here on the South Side, well, I'm 60 plus years now, and we're homeowners. Now, what does the person that lives on the South Side that wants to, those homeowners that want to like redo their homes and make it better, add amenities to it and those type of things. They might not want to get a new home, but maybe just revitalize the home that they have and make it better. Like for instance, my neighbor needs a new roof or something of that nature, and they want to continue to keep their homes that they do have and improve them. Is there anything there that can help them in those areas?
Yeah, so I can speak to what IHDA has, and at this time it is limited. Right now it's limited to our single family rehab program, the one that I was describing earlier, and I'll put the link to that in the chat box. And that requires a municipality, so either Peoria or a nonprofit that services Peoria, to apply for those funds from IHDA, and then they disperse it. So again, it's a relatively, I'm not sure how competitive it is, but it's a multi-step process. But I will say that the strategic planning and reporting department, our department, we're also doing some statewide planning. And even from the work that I do traveling the state and talking to communities, rehab consistently comes up as an extreme need, and our executive team is aware of it. Our planning department is aware of it. Right now, that single family rehab for homeowners is the only source from IHDA available, although of course there are other ones. Maybe Ross can speak to some of those, or DCEO also has some usually available, but I know it's a priority, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's another program that might come, or at least more funding for rehab, because it's certainly a need we're seeing and hearing across all communities right now.
So if you're a homeowner, if you are a homeowner, so you can rehab. That's the question. It is for homeowners that want to rehab.
Hello.
Yeah, Robert, just to, and I can't believe you've lived on the South Side for 60 years. You're not that old.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, Ross, I've lived here for 40 years.
So, you know, the city for years has used some of the federal funds that we receive directly from HUD for housing rehab. And, you know, we continue to use our CDBG dollars we have a roof replacement program.
Right.
We have, an emergency program that takes care of furnaces and water heaters and electric and plumbing and things like that. But the dollars are very limited. And, over the years, as our federal allocation has stayed pretty stable, that's a nice way of saying we're not getting any more money. But the cost of renovation has gone up. We're obviously not able to help as many people as before. And, for a couple of years, we actually used money from the South Village TIF to provide housing renovation assistance to property owners within the TIF. So that would be everybody on this side of Western, between Western and MacArthur. That program, that part of the TIF program is no longer funded, but that was the decision that was made by the city council. There's plenty of money in the South Village TIF. So if a future council wanted to pull more money out of that TIF and put it back into more housing rehabilitation, that's obviously completely their jurisdiction to do that. So I would really echo what Emily said, that rehab is important. And I think particularly on the South Side, where the challenge is that, and I don't, the challenge, if in a lot of neighborhoods where the housing market has a higher value, it's relatively easy to go to a lender, just a private lender, a bank, and get a loan to make an improvement to your house, because the underwriter at that bank is going to say, well, yeah, okay, I'll lend you $10,000 or $15,000 to make this repair to your house or make this upgrade to your house, because the comps are going to work out, because the value of your house is going to increase to the point where the money that you've borrowed can now be covered by the value of the property. The challenge we have on the South Side, and to a lesser extent in the rest of the valley and up onto the bluff, to be honest, is that the numbers don't pencil out. And so it becomes really difficult to go and borrow money to make the type of repairs that you need to make to a house, which is why it's important to have programs like this, whether it's state, federal, or local, that sort of come in and plug that gap. And that's something that I know has been a challenge and a discussion point for a really long time. So
Ross, I'm not to cut you off, but I had called you relative to the TIF. You say the decision was made by the city council for those TIF funds, not for homeowners not to be able to use those TIF funds, because we were told something different. Basically, that was the only program that homeowners that didn't meet some low income level could take advantage of. We pay half and the TIF pays half.
Yeah. No, you're completely correct, Martha. Let me make sure that I was clear on what I said. The TIF dollars were available to homeowners within the South Village TIF.
Right.
There was no income qualification.
Right.
Okay.
And so that was the only thing that was really good for most of the people, because contrary to popular belief, everybody won't qualify for.
Right. So what I was saying is that the city council made the decision to set aside, and I think it was $100,000. I can't remember the actual dollar amount, into a housing rehab program out of the larger bucket of TIF dollars. Now that money is all gone. So it was the council, because the council makes the decision on how to allocate money out. And so the council made the decision not to put any more TIF dollars into that program. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I heard what you said. Okay. But when it was set up like that, they were supposed to put money in it every year. So much money every year for homeowners to apply for and do work around their house. Some things people started to do, but they were supposed to finish it the next year, and it was no longer there. So, okay, so that was the TIF monies, and I was wondering about that because I haven't seen the application yet to get out to everyone. So,
Yeah, that's because there's no money. But if a new council wants to put money back into it, that's absolutely their ability
but the
to.
money is there. The TIF monies is there.
There is
It's like a
there's-
1.6 million or something like that.
Yeah, there's money in the TIF. It's just not allocated to this particular program.
Okay, great. All right.
So I don't want to. We're already over time here. I don't want to keep everyone because I know it's a weeknight evening and you probably have other things to do. So I guess just one last. Any more comments? I guess what I'm hearing is push home ownership. Don't want to be reliant upon the tax credit program in specifically as, you know, for as kind of the end all be all of what you're looking at. There's more to it. What else? Is that sort of it from the
Well, all the plans, all three entities together to see how they
Yep.
match with each other so we can review those.
Yep, we can
Okay.
do that.
So does that mean, you said earlier that this has a lot of overlap with the other documents. So what would be the need to sign off on this if there's already overlap in it from other documents?
This is a far more comprehensive document than the other ones. You know, the MacArthur. So just for example, the MacArthur corridor plan really was the MacArthur corridor. You know, it went about 2 blocks on either side of MacArthur. That was the focal area. So geographically, it didn't cover more. And just as a good example, we used the fact that the MacArthur corridor plan had been adopted by the city council to apply for some funding from IHDA, the Strong Communities program that we received $200,000 in that application. And I'd say that, you know, and I obviously wasn't the person at IHDA making the decisions on this, but without that document showing that this was something that the community had adopted, I don't think we would have seen that money. So that's the kind of connection between I've got a plan and here's an application with dollars, and that's how you kind of put them together. So the MacArthur plan was much more specific in terms of geography. And then the South Village TIF plan, well, it's a TIF plan, which is, there's a housing component, but it really was focused more on public infrastructure and the type of things that TIF dollars are typically used for. So if you kind of think about it, you know, the TIF plan was very infrastructure heavy. This is very housing heavy. The MacArthur plan was very geographically focused and covered a little bit of housing, a little bit of infrastructure, a little bit of community or of economic development. And I think to Martha's point, I think it's an excellent suggestion to sort of put them all together and say, here's where we have overlap, and here's where this plan talks about this, and this plan talks about this. I'm seeing Venn diagrams in my head. So, you know, that's something we can certainly put together.
All right, so we on to the next station. Next time, once we get all that, then, you know, we can all kind of come together around this thing, I would think. So one last question: the TIF and the was it East Bluff? That TIF is no longer for homeowners either.
Oh no, that TIF is funded. They've got $250,000 this year for rehab.
Okay, so you're just saying, now what you're saying is that the Southside TIF was the only one that was changed. It was a council decision, just the Southside. Okay, thank you.
And we can always change that, because I mean, if the council decides to bring it up for discussion and a vote, quite honestly, Ross, I have heard so many, and I think even it was just last year or so it was before the pandemic, at an SCUC meeting, the question came up a few years ago. We had, I think it was in the 50-50 program, we had made provisions for people to be able to get help to do renovations inside and outside the home, but somehow that was reversed over the last year or two to just apply to the outside of the home. But we hear so many people needing help. They've been in their homes for a while and they need a roof, or they need some other major repair. And we really could benefit from having a larger amount of that money used for rehabilitation. There are a lot of beautiful homes, but people just need extra assistance in doing that rehab work. And the TIF money, I mean, it sounds like that's what it's designed for, improvements back into those areas. So it just makes sense to at least be able to provide that for the folks that want to make those repairs, because a lot of times people feel like they're stuck. They'd rather use that than go to a bank.
Well, I think, Denise, I think what I heard him say was that the new council can decide to make those changes. I think it's discrimination myself to let the East Bluff have 250,000 and the Southside had nothing as it relates to it. So, so that's up to you.
I agree, Martha. I agree with you.
Okay.
We've certainly got a big need. I have heard that from people as I have been campaigning. So I have just never understood why we did not have that kind of money available for folks. I mean, if we're going to do it in one community, I mean, wouldn't it make sense to do it in another older community as well? I mean, I agree with you, Martha.
Okay, so Ross has said we went over, and I'm sorry. I probably made us go over. I had a question here from someone said, what, they have never heard of TIP. Is there a program called TIP, T-I-P?
Well, yeah, well, so I mean, we're tossing acronyms. It's a lot of bureaucratic speak here. So,
okay.
The TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan.
Oh, okay.
It is a document that is put together on a regional basis by an organization called PUATS, which is our Regional Transportation Authority planning agency that includes the 3 counties and then all of the cities within the counties. And basically so it's got everything from infrastructure improvements in downtown Peoria to improving a street in Farmington, and everything in between. It's basically this kind of wish list of, here are all of the transportation needs for the region, because transportation is really a regional issue. And that's the document that is then used when we apply for funding from the Illinois Department of Transportation or the Federal Highway Authority or any of the other organizations that provide transportation funding. So the TIP is not a document that you hear about very often unless you're in the transportation thing.
In that area, right.
Yeah. So.
Well, I just want to be sure that the people of the community are the stakeholders who say what they want in their community, because they're taking ownership and they're willing to make these things, a reality. So the people in the community should decide what it is that they want. And so I'll wait to hear from you all on the cross section of the 3, and then I'll share that with as many people as I can.
Okay. Thank
Is
you.
it possible to have a published list? As part of the scope of work, the city identified the critical local stakeholders and local community leaders or champions, including residents and representatives of the communities in which this project will perform its analysis. Can you publish that list of stakeholders that you identified and provided to IDA? That's part of your scope of work, line item number 3.
Yeah, we can go back and find out who we had on that list. Yep.
And who was invited to all those the 50 private stakeholder meetings, please.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Emily, Megan, do you have any closing comments?
No, thank you for everyone for attending. And then if you have questions, I know Carrie Lynn has been really fielding a lot of the input because she has, closer contacts with everyone there in the city, but we always have our doors, our phones, our emails open as well. So I know that at a prior meeting yesterday, we put our phone numbers in the chat. We can put our emails in there. They can also be found on IHDA's website. It's easy. It's just our first letter initial or our first name initial and then our last name at IHDA.org. And it looks like Megan's probably already typing those in for me. So yeah, thank you. Just appreciate your time and your comments in this process.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Hopefully we'll miss some of the rain.
All right.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
everyone.